Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And as always, so glad to have you along with us, especially this week, but more on that coming up in just a couple of minutes. Well, it is, boy, we're right into November now, aren't we? I mean, the whitetail rut is on. Even if you're not a deer hunter, this time of year I think is fascinating because as you watch the behavior of the deer in the Michigan woods, I mean, it just changes. The bucks are full of testosterone. They're running all over the place. The does are being chased all over the place. It's the best time. It's the best time of the entire season if you hope to shoot a nice buck or at least get a look at a nice buck. This is the time of year to do it. This whitetail rut that starts unofficially around Halloween and runs, almost up until the opening day of the firearm season. And it's hard to believe firearm gun season is just around the corner, isn't it? But anyway, it is a fascinating time to be in the woods. Unfortunately, I haven't been out there. I've been viewing the whitetail woods vicariously through my grandkids. Addison and Trent have been out there. They've been hunting a lot. I've been following their adventures. We've been watching the deer on the trail cameras, and there's a lot of daytime activity. And there's actually 3 bucks on our lease property that I would be very proud to shoot. And that's the first time that's happened in a long time. I don't know what the reason is, but it's nice to see. But as I say, unfortunately, I haven't been out there. And it still kind of blows my mind that I am able to say this, that I have to say this. I had a stroke. It was completely out of the blue. I did not see this coming. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have high cholesterol. And it took me out. I mean, it didn't take me out all the way, right? Because I'm still here, thank God, for the grace, and literally for the grace of God is why I am here right now. But and that's the reason. That's the reason why you actually saw a repeat or heard a repeat version of the show last week. It's the first time I can remember in nearly 40 years of doing this that I intentionally did a repeat radio show. I didn't have a choice. I was actually in the hospital on Wednesday, which is the day that we normally record the show. So I didn't really have a choice. I apologize for the fact that we had to repeat a show, but in the scheme of things, in the overall big picture, I guess it's really not that big a deal. So I was, and there are so many ways that this could have gone just terribly wrong. Everything worked out. Let me just tell you a little bit what happened. I was home, thank God. I mean, what if I would have been in the UP on a bear hunt? What if I would have been in a tree stand? What if I would have been on the freeway behind the wheel? But I wasn't. I was doing something so mundane that I had walked out to the mailbox to get the mail, and we live in town, so it's not like it's a quarter-mile walk or anything. I walked down to the mailbox, got the mail out, turned around, started back to the house, and boom, it hit me. And it was a very surreal but intense experience. I felt like the right side of my brain was collapsing. That's the only way I can describe it. I got really, really disoriented and really, really dizzy. I was able to make it into the house. My wife, Denise, she was in the process of making lunch. So I walked by her. She said, "You ready for lunch?" I said, "I don't feel good." I made it to the back room, and I sat down in my favorite chair, my favorite corner of the back room. And things just were coming apart. I just knew something was wrong. Denise, walked in there. She looked at me and she said, "What's going on?" I said, "I don't feel good." She said, "I'm going to call." And normally, being a guy and stuff, it's like, well, don't call the ambulance, don't call ER. I'm going to be fine. You know what? In this case, I knew I wasn't going to be fine. I knew something was really wrong. So she called my son James, and then she called 911. 911 kind of walked her through this, make sure there's no, the cavalry's on the way, right? The paramedics and the ambulance is on the way. But keep him comfortable. Is he alert? Yada, yada. Is he responsive? And I was responsive, but again, my whole world had changed in that fraction of a second. So the paramedics get there. The ambulance crew, they got here at the same time. They were able to get me out to a gurney to put me in the ambulance. And I didn't fight this at all, right? Because I knew I was in trouble. As they're helping me out to the ambulance, I can feel my right leg is dragging. My right arm is dragging. I don't think I was talking real good at that point. Maybe I was. I don't know. Get in the ambulance, and on the way to the hospital, I turned to him. Maybe I just said it out loud. To the paramedic in the back of the ambulance, I said, "I just had a stroke, didn't I?" And he said, "Probably. We'll know more when we get you to the hospital, but probably." And from then on, it was an absolute whirlwind. When they got me into the emergency room, I didn't even take a room right away. And some of this is by recollection, and some is, people told me what happened because I don't remember it all. Probably lucky. So the ER doc looks at me real quick. Boom, I go off to a CAT scan or something to make sure that the inside of my brain wasn't bleeding. And it wasn't. They get me in a room. They start doing all these tests. And because we got there right away, and this is something that's important to remember here for everybody. If you're having a stroke or you think somebody's having a stroke, don't screw around. Don't wait. Don't fight it. Don't be a real tough man and say, no, I'm okay. No, time is critical if you are indeed really having a stroke. You've got something like 4 hours to get this miracle drug into you that's basically a clot buster. If you got any blood clots in your brain that are causing strokes, it'll bust them up. So they got that in me right away. But while I'm in the emergency room, my son James and my wife Denise, they're watching this whole thing, and they said it got pretty bad. I remember parts of this, but they would say, "Lift your arm. Can you feel your arm? Talk to me. What's on this page, this written page in front of you?" And there were points where it was pretty bad. I mean, I couldn't lift my right arm. I couldn't make sense. I wasn't making sense when I was talking. I had no idea what was on this written page in front of me. It was bad enough that James started calling around. Like, he called my daughter down in Birmingham and said, "You need to get up here. This isn't good." Long story short, I'm okay. Again, it's grace of God. I know this 100%. I am standing here because God wanted to get my attention, but he wasn't ready to take me for whatever reason. I don't know what the reason is. It's a really weird feeling to be in this position to try to figure out, and I never will figure it out. But I'm all right. I was in the hospital 4 days. I was in ICU 3 days. But I'm okay. I'm actually recording this week's show from my home studio because I don't think I'm quite up to going into the radio station yet. I do still have some vision problems. I do still have some balance problems. Those are getting better, but it's not like I'm walking out into the woods. But I'm okay. Thank you to the medics. Thank you to the paramedics. Thank you to the nurses. Thank you to the doctors. Thank you to everybody there at Mid-Michigan Hospital. I'm going to be all right. It's scary. I'll tell you what, it was scary. There's no doubt about that. But thank you, Lord, and thank you. I put this out on social media that I had indeed had a stroke, and people came out of the woodwork, and I've tried to reach out to as many people as I can and thank as many people as I can. If you were one of those people and I haven't thanked you directly, thank you. I appreciate your support. It was a rough situation. It's not over yet, but it is getting better. And here I am this week, 1 week later, to be able to do this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. Coming up this week, Rob Miller, Tom Campell, Glen Duncan, Captain Mark Pieniozek, Dixie Dave, and lots more. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK, that's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Battle Creek on WBCK, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us in Caro on two stations, WKYO, that's 1360 AM, and WIDL, 92.1 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by my friends at the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination. If you want to take advantage of some wonderful fall walleye fishing on Saginaw Bay, Linwood Beach is your place to jump off onto the bay. Also, if it's time to put the boat away, Linwood Beach can help you out there as well. They can winterize your boat. They can even shrink wrap your boat. And if we do get some ice this season, and believe me, the folks at Linwood Beach are praying for ice, Linwood Beach is really one of the best places to take off on the west side of the bay. Their website is linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. All right, so let's turn our attention back to the deer season, right? Because that is what a lot of people are thinking about right now. I had a conversation earlier in the fall with Rob Miller. And the reason I had Rob on is, well, I consider him the guy who really helped bring the activity of using tracking dogs to recover fatally wounded whitetails. He's the guy who brought it to the masses. He's one of many trackers across the state now. But I thought, you know what, with the firearm season just around the corner, it would be a great time to kind of remind people about how to use a tracking dog and how not to screw things up if you're going to bring a tracking dog into the picture. So Rob Miller joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Rob, welcome back. How have you been, buddy?
I'm doing well, and once again, I appreciate this opportunity to have great conversation with you and educate the public and just have this conversation.
Well, listen, I'm just glad I'm around to even have a conversation with you. So I appreciate that as well, Rob. So listen, how has your fall gone so far? I got to believe you're just tired as can be by now.
It's been the craziest, busiest season for all trackers, not just myself, which really is a powered social media, your show of the hunters being educated on how to use a dog, how many dogs are available. I know I talk with a good 20 plus trackers, and I think each tracker has already done over 50 tracks themselves. Some have done up over 70 tracks themselves. It's just been crazy busy. That's good, and it's also bad.
Okay, why is it good?
It's good because a lot of deer are being recovered. A lot of tags are being punched, so they're not wounding more deer. That's ultimately good. Oh, also the coyotes aren't eating as much as they were hoping. And the bad is we're all exhausted.
Exhausted because there's not enough of you around, eh?
There's not. Between Friday evening and Sunday morning, I received 86 calls.
You can't possibly go on 86 calls. How many can you do?
I did about 3 a day.
Wow.
So
when we first started having this conversation, Rob, years ago, you were like the Lone Ranger. It was you and just a handful of guys out there, right?
yeah. And at that time, you're happy to get 3 calls a day.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, I got 3 calls today. Now it's just the phone. It's every 10 minutes, phone going off. And you can't have phone conversations with every hunter because every hunter wants to tell in detail of everything. They're excited. They're hoping you can be there. And unfortunately, you just got to be short. Hey, I can't make it. Here's the list that we developed. We do wish you the best. And ultimately, a lot of them guys, 90% of them are out there just grid searching like the old school way because there's not enough dogs to go around.
So this is interesting. You're making a lot of hunters happy by helping them to recover their animals, but the rest of them, it's kind of, I don't want to say you're breaking their heart because it's of no fault of yours, but they're coming away disappointed because they can't get a tracking dog out there.
Totally disappointed. 100%. Yeah. And at the end of the day, what we have to just keep educating hunters is be patient, pick your shot, know what your range of your equipment is. And we just have to be ethical hunters. Yeah, things happen, mistakes happen, and that's never going to change. But as hunters, we just got to do a better job of making those good, clean kills. And if we can't make it, let that deer walk.
That's a good point. I almost feel like I'm going to back up. I know that the goal of every Michigan hunter is to make a quick, clean, humane killing shot. But honestly, if in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, if I get a marginal shot, I can call in a tracking dog and pull off a miracle. Maybe that affects some people at the point of letting that arrow or bullet go.
I would hope hunters aren't thinking that way, but I wouldn't put it past some of them.
Yeah. So the point is, don't count on a tracking dog because it might not be available. Especially
during the rut. The rut right now, everyone's seeing, larger than normal whitetails because they're daylighting themselves. The deer activity's up, more deer being shot. And unfortunately, there's less than 100 trackers throughout our entire state. And with hundreds of deer being shot every day during the rut, we just can't keep up.
Man, that rut is a magical time, isn't it?
So magical. And it's happening right now as we're recording this. It's the best time to be in the woods.
We should be in the woods right now. I'm tied down to my home studio this week. And actually, people should know you have a real job. You have a full-time job. Tracking is just a hobby.
Yeah, I'm at work right now. I took my morning break to record this with you.
Well, you talked about, and I again, Rob, I do appreciate that. You talked about this network you guys have put together. What is that?
It's a group of trackers, of all like-minded trackers. We're all hardworking people, honest people, and we did our own vetting of trackers. So if you want to join the network, we have our own testing that we have you come and do. We kind of vet you as a human. You're not going to go out there and be smoking in the woods or show up drunk or show up late. And you actually have a dog that has proven itself to be worthy of joining our network. So hunters can trust when they call this list, hey, I know I'm not going to be taken advantage of at the time where I'm begging for help.
I remember early on when you were showing up with, I think it was Sarge, and he was a wiener dog. People were shocked. Cypress.
Yeah.
These days, your new dog is Silo?
Silo's my new dog. It's from Austria, an Applandis Dachsbrax. It's he's 49 pounds. He's all nose, no brains right at this moment. He's making me feel like an old man because this boy could go and I just simply can't keep up with him. But he's shown great potential, and it's at a time of my career, 17 seasons in. I have a 2.5-year-old dog where my old dog Sarge, he's 9. He's having some medical issues. Was not expecting this. And right now I'm trial by fire with a young dog, and boy, I forgot how hard it was to get a dog going.
Hold on a second. 17 seasons?
That's correct.
It's been 17 years since tracking dogs were allowed in Michigan?
It's been more than that. It's probably been 22, 24 years, but back then no one even knew about it.
Man, I'm feeling old enough this week without hearing that. Now I feel really old. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's exhausting at this point.
You'd think that at this point there would be more tracking dogs. Is it because it's such a physically demanding thing that more people aren't into it?
It's physically demanding, Mike. It's very demanding on a family. If you're a married man or a woman that's married, it's demanding. You have to have a flexible job to allow you to be late for work all the time or take X amount of vacation time off. It's hard to get a young dog started. That's a real big thing I want to talk about this conversation with you is just a young dog it takes a few years for a dog to really understand why am I following this old cold scent that in a world of wolves nothing would be there. So young dogs like to get on the hot scent because naturally hot scent would mean you're closer to the prey, which means you're going to get a reward. So it's a lot going into it. It's an emotional roller coaster. It's a physical roller coaster. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So it really takes a hard-headed person to become a tracker.
All right. So the dogs, are you teaching them to track, or is it inbred? Is it born into them and you guys just go along for the ride?
We're teaching them to not be distracted by things that we don't want them to follow. The tracking part ultimately comes natural to the dog. We just say, hey, we're not out here coon hunting, possum hunting, or live deer chasing. So it's a lot of distractions is what the handler is trying to teach the dog not to do.
I remember years ago, the people said, oh boy, if you've got dogs out there tracking deer, they're going to be running deer. That's going to be the problem. They're going to be running these deer. But I never hear of that, Rob, not with you guys and your dogs.
It does happen for a young dog. I'm not going to deny that. I will have a great example is I went to a property for a repeat client with my young dog, and it was a mess. It was not a pretty track job. We ended up finding the deer, but he sends me a text later at 2 a.m. of bucks back breeding in the food plot. Trail cameras are all lit up, and he says, you guys had zero impact on my property, and he was quite pleased by that.
Wow. What do you mean it wasn't pretty? Without going into details, not all of these things are textbook, are they?
No, what I mean by pretty was Silo found 2 possums. He found 2 raccoons. And, he leaves the scent trail to go check that log with a possum going down. And he tries to grab the possum, and I have to pull him back and take him back to the last known blood and restart. Well, then he tracks good for however long. And we jump a deer, and he wants to go chase the deer, and I got to stop that. That's what I mean by not pretty. It's just, the focus isn't quite there with a young dog, and through tribulations, trial by fire, he'll eventually realize, there's no reward on all these other things that he thinks is exciting. And ultimately, we start finding more and more deer. He realizes, this is my job, and he'll become more focused and accurate tracker.
But I do have to ask you, I do have to follow up. What happens when you come up on a deer and it's alive?
Normally with a deer, since we're off leash right now, we do allow the dogs, if the dog is mature enough and can handle themselves, we allow the dogs to, we call it face barking. The dog will get within 10 yards of the deer and just be barking at it. And the deer is distracted by this dog. And a single dog, the deer naturally doesn't want to run because they've dealt with coyotes their whole life. So the buck just stands there and just basically holds it ground. And so we use that dog as a distraction decoy. And we come in downwind of the deer quietly and get the hunter within archery or gun range. And we get the weapon loaded. And we call the dog back using the e-collar system. And then the deer basically watches the dog come running back to the direction where we're at. And then all of a sudden, the client's dog's free and clear. The client dispatches the deer, and it's over.
Rob, we got to take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. Where do we find you online? How do we get in touch with you?
Miller Deer Tracking on Facebook or the Michigan Deer Tracking Network group.
Miller Deer Tracking on Facebook or the Michigan Deer Tracking Network?
Yep.
Okay. All right, Rob, hang tight. We do have to take a break. We're talking with Rob Miller, the guy who, in my mind, pioneered the activity of using tracking dogs to recover mortally wounded whitetails. I have not personally, well, let me back up. I was going to say I haven't personally been involved in a track. It was just a training track. My grandson Carter shot a big doe, and we brought in a young tracking dog just to give that dog some time on the leash. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold. That's 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Premier Maritime Training. If you've ever wanted to get your captain's license, I think this is your best bet. Captain John Littlefield taught my class, and believe me, if he can help me become a licensed charter captain, he can help you out as well. Check out the website, pmtcaptains.com, for more info. That's pmtcaptains.com. John has classes across the state. I'm sure you can find one that fits your schedule. That's pmtcaptains.com. We're talking right now with Rob Miller of Miller's Deer Tracking about using a tracking dog to recover a fatally wounded whitetail. And Rob, that's important, right? Obviously, if a deer isn't fatally wounded, you can't recover it.
Yeah, we're not legally allowed to be chasing a live deer that's just hypothetically injured. If we realize as a tracker the deer is not fatally wounded or slowly dying, at that point we have to do legally, ethically, is to back off, let that deer recover, and the hunter needs to go back trying to harvest that deer.
I would bet, though, that you end up in some interesting situations. This fall alone, I know you keep track of your tracks. What's your longest track this fall?
For me, it's maybe a half mile at most. Going back to, I have this young dog right now, so we're not able to really advance these tracks crazy distance with a young dog. I do know some of the other guys with 9-10-year-old dogs that are in their prime. They've actually had a couple of recoveries that were over 2 miles.
Huh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
how should we? Okay, we're in the rut. We're wrapping up the first part of the a bow season. Gun season now just around the corner. If we are able to get a hold of a tracker, how should we use you people, you guys, you trackers? What should we do ahead of time before you even get there?
First and foremost, talk to your neighbors. We need property permissions in order to track. Every tracker is registered through the state of Michigan. That means when we show up to your property, we get your deer license, we text that into the report all poaching hotline, so the conservation officers know exactly who we're tracking for and where we're tracking. So we will not knowingly trespass. And at that point, if we get to a property stop and you don't have permission, the track stops there until we get permission. And it's really hard to stop a dog when you're dialed in, and to go get permission to come back. That's just a real big headache that we like to avoid.
All right, that's fair enough. That makes sense. What about doing searching before you guys get there? You know, the good old fashioned grid search. Call your buddies in. Let's do a grid search. And if that doesn't work, then we'll call in the tracking dog.
And a lot of people think of that. And if a tracker is charging you money, I think logically, if you're going to pay money, you want that dog to be set up for success. So leave that line as clean as possible. Have the tracker come in, give that dog the best odds for recovery. If the dog then is unsuccessful, then go get your buddies and blow the property up. But if you want to go blow the property up first and you expect the dog to come in and problem solve this complete mess, you're asking a lot of a dog, and unfortunately, a lot of times it does not end the way you want it to.
You mentioned charging. What's a tracker going to charge?
Right now, I think the average rate is $150 to $200. With so many trackers now, a lot of trackers aren't traveling crazy distances. So I would say 200 and under. For example, this entire deer season, I've actually just done it by donations. I mean, I've got as low as $20, and I had one guy hand me $200. And again, with a young dog, I'm out here just trying to put the dog to work. I'm trying to help hunters. So I do know a lot of trackers are actually switching over to the donation format. Times are tough for a lot of people. The economy is not the best for everybody. And we as trackers are just out here trying to just work hard and make the hunters happy. When
you vet the hunters, when they call at first, you try to find out as much as you can and all that stuff. But are you finding out, like, I guess my question I'm trying to get out is, are you tracking trophy bucks only, or will you go after small bucks and even a doe?
When you're a donation tracker, you get all the above. Honestly, the trackers that are charging big money, a lot of people that shoot the small deer and does, we just don't want to pay that, and that's their choice. Doesn't mean I agree with it. So, but during the rut, it's predominantly trophy bucks are being shot at this time.
Is it still a rush for you after all these years to follow your dog up on this trail and then find this big, beautiful buck that probably would not have been recovered without you?
You might be shocked by this, Mike. It's no different of a rush if the rack was 200 inches or a doe fawn.
Really?
I just love finding the deer because then I know my dog did its job. That's the trophy for me. Now, it is exhilarating to watch the hunter come in and the hunter break down with excitement. That's a magical moment, but I really don't care if it's got antlers or not.
Okay, so after all these years, you follow your dog up and you find this brown thing laying up there. You don't care what it is, but it's still a rush.
I'm stoked at that point, yes.
That's pretty exciting, Rob. Listen, I appreciate your time. Again, where do we find you online?
Miller Deer Tracking, Facebook, and Michigan Deer Tracking Network group on Facebook. And I just wanted one more thing to the gun season hunters. If you guys have a broken leg deer, you shoot your deer, you watch it run off, and the leg is flopping. I know it sounds nasty. Call a dog right then. With the off-leash laws change and a broke leg deer, those are very easy for our dogs to track and catch up to. And if done right, we could end suffering on probably 90% of them as long as we have enough properties to track on.
Excellent, Rob. I appreciate that. Appreciate your time. Good luck this season. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon, but I wish you nothing but luck with that new dog. Rob Miller of Miller's Deer Tracking. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You know, you can hear the show all across the state of Michigan on more than 30 stations, including WHTC in Holland. That's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. In Lansing, 1320 AM. And in Ludington, News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by my friends from Reeder Landscaping. Man, the folks at Reeder have been busy lately with fall cleanup, blowing out sprinkler systems. In fact, they did the fall cleanup at my place just a few days ago. They're coming out this week to blow out the sprinkler systems. They can do the same for you. Don't forget about their holiday containers. They can bring them right on out to your porch or patio. They look great. ReederLandscaping.com. That's ReederLandscaping.com. All right. You know, I like to occasionally check in with the good folks at Woods-n-Waternews, Michigan's premier outdoor publication. Tom Campbell with us once again. Tom, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Just fine, Mike. Thank you.
So, Tom, it is the first. Well, it's the rut. It's early November. Firearm season just around the corner. What a great time of year!
Absolutely, Mike. You're so right. And actually, we're in a real rush here to get that December issue out there for opening day. So we got some new information. People can pick it up on the way to deer camp or on the way back from hunting. So we're shooting for that opening day Friday.
Okay, so yeah, Friday or November 15th of November, and you say you're going to have the December issue hopefully out by then.
Exactly right, Mike. Yep, we like to be that half month ahead of time, so it can cover information that's still in November, and it'll, of course, I have December and January and all that good stuff we look forward to then as well.
Can I assume there'll be a picture of a big buck on the December edition?
As we speak, Mike, I'm looking at a few that have just come in, and I'm going, oh, my, that's fantastic. Yeah, it looks like I think I don't believe I received as many big bucks in October as usual. But November, the last few days, I think, like you said, the rut's kind of kicking in, and people, the weather's still kind of goofy, but you finally got a cool weekend here, and I think some people got out there in the tree stand, and it looks like some dandy bucks coming in.
How do you decide? Because to me, that's the cherry of Michigan Outdoors, is ending up on the cover of Woods-n-Waternews. How do you decide what photos end up there?
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. You know, you really got to go first by composition. I mean, you know, it's got to be a decent photo laid out. I mean, respectful, you know, the position and everything is in good shape. You always want that first, you know, and then obviously Everybody loves to see the big bucks, so we kind of gravitate to the bigger. But sometimes, there's a story or a young person or a new hunter, so that kind of captivates our attention, and that kind of bumps things up. But yeah, it's a feel. There's no doubt about it. We go through and we all get an opinion on it. Hey, look at this. What do you think? We'll mock up a few layouts of the cover, and everybody in the office and gets to throw their 2 cents in and says what they like and what they don't like, and we kind of go from there. And luckily, we've hit it pretty good.
Yeah, you got a pretty good track record. If a deer, all right, if you've got a beautiful picture and you look at the deer and the tongue is hanging out the side of its mouth, is that a factor?
It's tough, but the magic of technology today really helps that, and we can hide a lot of that. Same with a lot of blood, but it sure does help if the trophy hunter, the guy, the person that sends that in, kind of cleans it up a little bit. It sure does make it a better picture, and thinks about the background, what's behind you, where are you at, it's hard to do because the excitement and you want to get that picture taken so bad. But those things greatly help. And down the road, then you have a great photo too that you can use, so just take that little bit of time and fix it up a little bit, pose it correctly. And people are doing such a great job. I mean, photography today has gone leaps and bounds. So.
Well, it has. And along that line, with the recent Apple update, the iOS update, Tom, I found out that if I get a picture of a buck with the tongue hanging out, I can go into my pictures, I can circle it, and it makes it disappear. It makes me a happy guy.
It doesn't it though? Absolutely right. We've been experimenting, with some of those backgrounds, and not that they're bad backgrounds, but they're dark or something. Yeah. We've even looked at popping that deer right off the background and putting it on some, but we don't want to go too far with it. We want,
well,
it's their trophy, not our trophy.
Exactly, and that's just it. What's the fine line between making it a perfect picture and destroying what that person sent you? So what? Okay, so the December edition of Woods-n-Waternews, you hope to have it out by opening day. What are we going to see in that issue?
Oh, we've got some great, we're still catching up. We've got several big bear stories that we got to catch up from the fall bear season here too. So we've got great bears. We've always will have that December issue, some great ideas for those looking for gifts for the angler. Anybody that's got an angler on their Christmas list. Mark Romanek did a great job of putting together some ideas for you. And of course, we've got lots and lots of trophy photos. We're still catching up on the youth hunt, believe it or not. We've got some great youth stories. We got a cute one on a 5-year-old that took a nice buck during the youth season. So there's going to be, and we got some good, really well done guest columns that'll appear in the December issue as well.
The December issue of Woods-n-Waternews, the website woods-n-waternews.com. Real quick, where do we find you in the real world, Tom?
Absolutely. Your favorite newsstands, and you can get a subscription.
Sounds good. Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews, woods-n-waternews.com. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, Glen, Duncan, and lots more coming up in this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And as I always say, I think the best way to listen to the show, if you can, is on your local radio station, your local AM or FM station. You get your local news there, your local weather, your local sports, even your local sales ads. Maybe there's a sale or something you want to take advantage of that you would not know about if you weren't listening to your local radio station. But isn't it nice to know that there's a backup? Again, listen to Outdoor Magazine on your local radio station if you can. But if not, it's good to know there is a backup, a podcast version that is a backup. You can hear the podcast version of the radio show. And by the way, the podcast is exactly the same content as the broadcast version. You can hear that on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. You can hear it on my Facebook page, Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, now called X, LinkedIn, Apple, Google, iHeart, SoundCloud, Spotify, yada, 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 right on down through YouTube. I do not put the content of the podcast up. I don't upload the podcast until all of the broadcast stations get the content. So it's about 6 o'clock Sunday afternoons when the podcast is made available. I do like podcasting, though. In fact, each month I do podcasts for some of my advertising partners, including Offshore Tackle, Angler Quest Boats, QUEST, and Primal Outdoors. Although this week, the whole recording schedule got kind of screwed up. I don't know what podcasts, if any, we're going to do this week. Had a little medical situation. If you were with us in the first hour, you know what I'm talking about. So rather than be in the studio this week, I'm actually recording a little bit early, and I'm recording from my home studio, which is actually, pretty nice. I miss the guys. I miss Charlie and John in the radio studio, and hopefully I'll be back there next week. But for now, this is a pretty effective way of doing things. I want to turn my attention now, and this is something that, I should have done this topic 2 weeks ago, right? I was going to do it last week, had the stroke, things got in the way. But I still think it's a valid topic. And the topic is sighting in your deer rifle. Now, hopefully by now, most of you have that deer rifle sighted in. So you can use this information for next season. If you don't have it sighted in by now, Glen Duncan of Duncan's Outdoor Shop in Bay City probably has more experience with sighting in rifles than anybody I know. And one reason is he's got that big, beautiful underground indoor range where you can go in and sight your guns. In fact, I was there a few weeks ago with my Brenton 350 Legend, getting it ready for bear season, and that turned out pretty well. Glen Duncan, welcome back to the Outdoor Magazine show. How are you, buddy?
Doing great. I'm glad to hear you're doing good, too.
Well, I am, Glenn. I got a few small problems to work through, but overall, God certainly did bless me. It's a pretty special place to be in,
Yeah, we both have been pretty lucky this last couple of years.
Sighting in guns. Let's talk about that, Glenn. First of all, tell me about your range. Now, as far as I remember, you are the only indoor 200-yard range open to the public.
Yes, that's still true. And then we have the 250s, 100, and 200.
You don't start right out on the 200, I would suspect.
No, we make you qualify on the 50 to get everything sighted in. And the 50-yard range, you can shoot from 0 yards to 50 yards. So we want to make sure that you're shooting good and everything's working good on your gun. Just happened that the scope or the gun got dropped or something. Today was a prime example. Guys don't know what happened. He went out the outdoor range to sight in, and it wasn't even on the paper at all. And they just said, go see Glenn. And so his scope was way off, and he still don't know how it happened, but it's good that we were able to fix it and get it back on.
Well, I would like to think that these scopes and guns are a little more robust than what I'm finding out they are. I don't think that just banging it around the back of your truck a little bit should knock your scope out, but sometimes it does.
It does. Inside of a scope, how they're built and made and stuff, they're pretty darn strong, but there's springs, and springs after a while fatigue. Housings that were like a nut, they're made out of brass, and so if you're constantly beating on your gun and stuff, then there's more of a chance of something like that happening.
And you don't know until you go to sight it in.
That's right.
So your range is there, okay, 50, 100, you said 200. How many people actually go out to the 200-yard range, that distance?
Probably a third. 2/3 they do the 100 in the 50. that extra third wants to know what that 200 is, because they're hunting. There's a good chance of having a 200-yard shot. Most people in Michigan, as you know, 100-yard shot's a long for most people.
Yeah, it is. But, in 100 yards, a lot can happen. So you want to make sure you're good to go.
Yes.
Now, when I was in there getting ready for bear season with my Brenton 350 Legend, we ran into an interesting situation. And you and I talked about it on the air here several weeks ago, but my gun wasn't cycling after I put a suppressor on. It had screwed up the pressures. If we would have played around with the gas block, we could have got it to work. But it was nice that I had another type of ammo there with me, a Winchester 180 grain. We put those through the gun, Glenn, and it's right in. It's as close as I need it. But that just illustrates how important the choice of ammo really is.
Right. Just because it says Remington on the outside of the gun doesn't mean Remington's going to shoot the best out of your gun. And we've talked to that many times, that you got to find what your gun likes. And when we get into guns and stuff, the vibration of and the rifling of the barrel and all those factors are involved with it really determines what round and what kind of bullet you need for your gun.
Now, I have heard, and I don't know if this is true, but say you had Federal Fusion 180 grain, and you took a box of that from a year later, those two boxes might not even shoot the same.
True, because when they're building ammo, and there's times people have problems with their ammo, and even with you, Mike, that we talked about the lot numbers inside the box, and not on the outside. Most of them are stamped inside the lid of the box, and that tells them, the manufacturer, what the primer and where that primer came from, what the powder is, what lot of powder they came from. It'd be like a wine, what barrel of wine did that glass of wine come, what barrel of powder that powder came from, even the bullet, how the bullet was made, and what lot that those bullets were made in are all put together, and so it comes up with this lot number, and they know exactly all the components of that round. So that's why it's important that when you find a lot of ammo that it shoots, if you can buy more of it, but it's hard anymore to do that. But it is a very important thing.
So what is the availability of ammo these days, Glenn?
Right now, we're not too bad. I was just talking on the phone with Hornaday today, and Hornaday has got some amount of production still sitting in the warehouse, and that's really rare right now. Remington and Federal is down a little bit in quantity. There's a lot of different oddball stuff you won't see this year at all, because the numbers weren't big enough for them to make it the change on them. Whenever they change a caliber, that's a half a day down for a manufacturer, making all the adjustments, getting all the ammo, everything ready to make this new round of ammo and stuff. So they're not going to change unless they can sell a lot of cases of that ammo right now.
When you say oddball, give me an example of what we're talking.
303 British. They made it a little bit this year. They should be making another run. They're not going to. 35 Whalen, things that are Michigan type hunting. Remington 35 Rem. They made some, but they're not. They should be making another batch, and they said no, it's not big enough for us to do another batch. So stuff that's popular in Michigan is being cut.
What about 30-06, 30-30, 350, 450 availability of those?
They're building that, but they're building it in less different style of points. Like the Winchester would make 30-06, and they make in the same grain. They'd make 4 different bullets. They're only making 2 this year.
So it's out there, but the exact combination you want might not be available.
Right. You might be silver point guy, and there's no silver point.
So you get what you can and try to make it work.
Yep. And in some guns and some ammo, it doesn't matter at all. Other guns, like you've seen in the past, that it means a lot. And so don't take for granted, and don't at the last minute go to the hardware and try to buy a box of ammo and think without sighting it in. You need to make sure it's sighted in for that ammo.
Well, are there certain guns that are just more tolerant? I'm thinking like a Ruger American or something like that they make so many of Tolerance is maybe not quite as tight. Is that gun more forgiving?
All the new barrels were getting better, but better means 3.5, 4 inches. And so if you're stretching it out to 200 yards, 3.5 to 4 inches is a lot. We're talking 3.5, 4 inches at 100 yards difference for some people.
A lot of factors going on here, Glenn.
Well, it's a fun experience, but secondly, that a lot of people haven't got their gun out in a year, and they're not used to it. They're not used to the safety on and off. They're not used to using their gun.
Well, listen, I got to take a break here, but let's talk more about that. Let's follow up on that. We're talking with Glen Duncan of Duncan's Outdoor Shop in Bay City. The website, duncansoutdoor.com. That's duncansoutdoor.com. We'll take a quick break and be right back with Glen Duncan of Duncan's Outdoor Shop. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC, that's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins, Michigan-based, family-owned VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Great example is why buy a bunch of different sets of hunting clothes. For example, you were wearing a certain camo pattern during the fall bow season. Now the firearm season is just around the corner. Why would you want to have to buy a whole different set of hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set, being VersaSkins, and you snap on and zip on an outer shell of a different camo pattern, and it takes less than a minute. If you're looking for big sizes, 4, 5, 6X, VersaSkins has you covered, literally. And if you are a saddle hunter, VersaSkins can help you out there as well. 2 places to look for VersaSkins online. You can go to the website versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. Or you can also find them now on Amazon. Go to Amazon and do a search for VersaSkins brand. Whichever way you find them, wherever you find them, however you find them, I can guarantee you will not be disappointed. You also will not be disappointed if you decide to sight your gun in at Duncan's Outdoor Shop in Bay City. They have the only 200-yard indoor range open to the public, but they have a 50-yard range. They have a 100-yard range. Glen Duncan has been working in this world of guns and sighting in forever. How long has it been, Glen?
Well, I've been around guns and playing with guns for 64 years now.
I didn't even know you were that old.
I wish I was in some days.
So your whole life?
Yes. Yep. I've had a couple other jobs in between, but even having other jobs, I still worked a 30-hour week working on guns.
How has the business, the industry, the shooting industry changed over the years?
So a lot. Our design of guns and stuff has changed a lot. Where we would do a lot of gunsmithing, fitting parts and stuff. Now with all this high equipment of CNC equipment, machines and stuff, there's less fitting of parts. To me, sometimes I think they're looser fitting, but the accuracy we're getting out of them is great. So it's kind of hard to say, well, they need to make tighter guns to get the accuracy that we want. But it's surprising that the way the barrels are made are so much better made barrels. Mossberg makes tons of barrels, and Mossberg, and for other companies, and they make great match grade barrels, and not from there on down. So it's really a different industry.
Well, you mentioned the Mossbergs. I talked about the Savages in the first segment. Some of these companies that in the past didn't have the best reputations these days are pretty highly looked upon.
Well, you take Savage, the Savage nut system, way they screw their barrels onto an action. There are so many high-end companies making that type of action with a screw-on barrel that Savage invented decades ago. And so these companies that have been doing things right, people are catching on to it.
I want to go back to what you said just before the break. You talked about getting refamiliarized. I'll use that as my term, not yours, with your gun. I saw that when I went into the range with my Brenton 350. It is an AR-style gun. I am still fairly new to that platform, and I had to reacquaint myself with it. It took a few shots to get comfortable again. You don't want to do that in the field with a buck in front of you.
No, when you're taking the safety off and you're squeezing that trigger, and two guns don't feel the same, and so one gun might need a lot more take up than the other gun. One might have a step in it, and you know about that step, and then after that is we call a two-stage trigger. All these things make a big difference in your gun, and it makes different how you shoot when you're squeezing that trigger off.
What's the most popular style of deer rifle you see come into the shop these days?
We're still the basic bolt action. The Savages, the Remingtons, the Rugers are still the number one. Next to that is your AR style guns. I mean, that's really gone over big now that, especially in Michigan, with having the 450s and the 350s and the Brentons, all these other companies making the AR styles in Michigan calibers. It's been great.
Well, that Brenton that I have is known as an accurate gun, but overall, if you take the whole shooting world, a bolt action, a good old fashioned bolt action, is a very accurate, reliable gun, right?
It is. When you take a shell that goes off, and when it fires in your gun, it expands and it cools down quick. But if you have a semi-automatic, as soon as that gun goes off, it's trying to extract that shell out faster than most people can do with a bolt action. So you have less chance of having a bolt not in the casing not coming out of the gun, sticking inside the chamber, because you gave it that extra second to cool down. And that's why brass bullets the casings are made with brass. So all that heat comes away from the barrel, goes into the brass casing, and you throw it on the ground or get it out of the gun. So it takes that heat away from your gun and makes your gun more accurate.
If I get a casing that is silver colored, is that still brass?
It's brass with a nickel plating on. The biggest ones are these. People get these sales on steel casings and 9mm and 223 and 5.56. AK style ammo and stuff. You'll see a lot of military steel brass from other countries, and that's hard on your barrel. It leaves the heat in your barrel, so your barrel wears out faster.
All right, let's talk about barrels for a minute. How often should I clean my gun? And should I hunt on a dirty barrel or a clean barrel? And I know I can open up a can of worms with that question.
Man, do you just throw the big can out there. Okay, when you come in and you sight your gun in and you cleaned it, the first couple shots, we're watching you on the range to see where they go. If after the first couple shots, you start getting a nice group, that tells me that you need to be shooting with a dirty barrel. If you come in and the first three shots are right on top of each other, you can shoot with a clean barrel. So if you've got a gun that the first 2 or 3 shots it took to get sighted in or get the group to kind of be controlled, not blaming you as the shooter not getting used to your gun, but the gun itself, it needs that what we call seasoning a barrel, and it needs to have falling shots or seasoning shots in it to get that dirt in there just enough to make it more accurate.
How much of a difference could that make, say, at 100 yards, Glenn?
A couple inches.
Which most cases probably wouldn't matter, but if you had a marginal hit, it could.
Right. And if we just say 100 yards, but we stretch that out at all. And if I take 2 inches and you're not stable for 2 inches more, now we're even farther out. So the more that you can learn about your gun, the better it is for you.
And again, that goes back to time behind it. Just time behind that gun, sending bullets downrange.
Yep, it's important to have your hands on it. If you don't have time to go to the range, just get your gun out and make sure it's unloaded and check that all out. But sit there and close and open the bolt, turn the safety on and off. Just rack the bolt with the safety on and taking it off. So you remember where the safety is, because a lot of people go shotgun hunting and the shotgun safety is in one place, and now it's rifle season for deer, and they're still thinking they got their shotgun where the safety is on the Mossberg is on top, and your safety now is on the side. And if you got a 3-position safety or a 2-position safety, and you got a couple different guns, which gun do I have? The one I got to rotate the safety farther for the second or the third step, or do I just go 2 steps? So it's important to keep track of what you have in your hands at this moment.
Isn't it interesting that in today's world, you even had to add that caveat of make sure the gun is unloaded? Because obviously that's common sense. We as gun owners, as shooters, we get that's one of the basic rules of firearm safety. But in today's world, you felt like you had to say that. And I get it. I understand that. But isn't that interesting, Glenn?
Yeah. We don't live with them as what we used to do years ago. And sometimes that something around the house or neighborhood scared me enough that I wanted to load my gun and just have the magazine loaded, and that was it. But I put the magazine in and didn't remember that I did had loaded rounds when I closed the bolt on my magazine, and I just fed around in my gun, and I didn't plan on loading my gun. I just planned on loading the magazine. And so without handling your gun, being around your gun more and more, and with us, our lifestyles have changed so much that we don't get time to play with them as much as we want.
Yeah. And you, because of your position in the shooting industry and because you know so many people over so many years, people bring you into their confidence. You are involved in gun rights at the highest levels. I don't want to get too political. By the time people hear this show, the election will be over. But what's the perception out there these days, Glenn? We hear about people coming after our guns, even our hunting guns. Is it a legitimate threat, or are we/me, Avery, making something out of nothing?
You're not making right now with all these small groups that have bigger voices than the big groups do. It's what scares me. And before, small groups would make a lot of noise and stuff, but these small groups that have no idea about guns, have no idea about shooting, all they have one thing in mind is we got to get rid of guns. And you and I know how safe guns are. We don't worry about a set of keys laying on their table at home, and many kids steal the car, take it for a joyride, and get in an accident and cause death of themselves or their high school and college friends and stuff, especially high school. And so we need to look at what we're doing, and we have a safe sport. When you have as many millions of people shooting competition every year, and there's no accidents on ranges and competition going on in most sporting good ranges and stuff, it's a safe sport. There's a few people that use our tool to cause damage to other people, just like they do to take cars and run over people at a parade and stuff. And you think that would never happen in our lifetime. Nobody would ever think of doing that.
Well, it's just in today's world, I always say we as hunters have to go out of our way to portray ourselves in a positive manner. And gun owners the same way. Hunters and gun owners the same way. We would never intentionally do something stupid, but we got to make sure that we don't, and we got to make sure to put a good message out in the public eye. Maybe that's a shame, but that's a reality.
It is. It's what's going on in our world right now, and there's a few people wrecking it for the rest of us.
Glen Duncan of Duncan's Outdoor Shop in Bay City, duncansoutdoor.com. We'll take a break. Lots more coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Muskegon on WKBZ, that's 1090 AM. You can hear us in Tawas on WIOS 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba, the Riviera of the North, on WCHT, that's 600 AM, 93.5 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots. Now, I know you're not putting in food plots right now, but you might well be hunting over a Killer Food Plot. And don't forget about their line of scents and attractants, which could be very useful this time of year as well. Speaking of this time of year, I've been talking throughout the show, it is the whitetail rut. It's a great time of year to be out in the whitetail woods. If you're a hunter, what if you're a game warden? Is this the time of year that game wardens look forward to, or they say, oh man, this is going to be a busy time of year? Let's find out from Lieutenant Joe Molnar. He's with the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Lieutenant, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Excellent. Appreciate you having me on again. And, most every conservation officer that I know gets into becoming a conservation officer because they love the outdoors. They love hunting and fishing themselves. So just as much as it is one of our busiest times a year, it is also one of our favorite times a year. Not only do we get to go sneak out every once in a while to get out hunting ourselves, but to, get out, make a bunch of contacts, and to also make some cases against the people that are poaching the deer, the ones that are stealing our resource from the legal, ethical sportsmen. So, I mean, it is very rewarding to be able to catch those that are violating the law.
And I want to talk about that in a minute. But first of all, and I don't want to get too much into your business, but you come from a family of law enforcement, in fact, DNR law enforcement, right?
Yep. So my father is a retired conservation officer. He retired 6-7 years ago. Time starts flying by, and my brother, we don't talk about him so much, but he's a state trooper. But yeah, definitely a law enforcement family. Grew up. Dad taught me the love of the outdoors and inspired me to follow in his footsteps.
You talked about people who are out violating deer. I always say that if you spend enough time in the outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, shooting, or trapping, eventually you will unintentionally violate some kind of law. But this isn't what you're talking about, right? You're talking about the people who are intentionally going out there to take a deer illegally.
Yep. Everybody, whether it be you head out small game hunting and you're hunting squirrels or rabbits and you forget your license, those mistakes, those accidents happen. What we're looking for, the people that, we, target and focus on are those taking over limits of bucks. They're using other people's tags. They're shining and shooting at night, or, they're throwing out bait piles to give themselves the unfair advantage over the ethical hunters.
Yeah, nothing accidental about what they're doing. This is intentional, those people.
Yep.
And I know from my time years ago as a VCO, a volunteer conservation officer, we saw this time and time again. If somebody is a violator, they're probably a lawbreaker in other areas as well. I mean, they come from that kind of mentality.
Yep. It's not uncommon for the violators that we're looking for, that we're trying to track down, that are our counterparts in traditional law enforcement, city, county, state police. They're dealing with them sometimes for, B&Es, breaking and enterings, because again, if they're willing to violate someone's property rights by trespassing and hunting, some of these folks, they also commit other violations as well.
What are the big things you see this time of year, Lieutenant? What do your people spend most of their time on this time of year?
Right now, again, we're starting to switch over to the rut. The bucks are starting to become a little bit more active. A pretty popular complaint that my folks run on, again, are going to be, shots fired at night, some shining and shooting type stuff. But, those are kind of the more, the bigger complaints. But one of the biggest things that my folks are running on right now are dumped deer carcasses. Hunters that have, processed the deer themselves. They've driven down a road, 2-track county road, and they dump their carcasses along the edges of the county, or on the edges of the county road, which constitutes a litter. But the biggest issue, the biggest thing that I have with this is it paints sportsmen in such a horrible light. Everyone driving by looks at it and says some slob hunter, threw their garbage on the side, and now I have to look at it. So it can be from everything from dealing with people, trespassing and shooting deer at night, to something that most of us might think would be pretty minor, of throwing our deer on the side of the road. And, that just gives all hunters a bad name. And then, when we, look to try to preserve our hunting rights, if there's ever another ballot, the folks that are looking at that and say, well, they don't care about what they have right now, and why should I, support the hunters? So, that's something that we do see a lot of, and I think just paints us in such a horrible light.
Man, am I glad you brought that up, because in today's world, more than ever, we have to be concerned with how we portray ourselves. You and I both know that hunters are the ultimate stewards of the resource. We are the ones who pay for for conservation. We are the ones who control the size of the populations, but we need to let the non-hunters these days know that we're good people.
Yep, most definitely. And every single time somebody dumps a deer carcass, trespasses on a neighbor's property, or, just goes around showboating. These are things that just hurt us. And again, 90% of the sportsmen out there would never think about doing any of these. But again, it's that 10% that don't care that ultimately hurt us all.
Hey, hang tight, Lieutenant. We will follow up on that. We're talking with Lieutenant Joe Molnar of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a quick break and come right back. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Port Huron on WPHM 1380 AM. You can hear us in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. And you can hear us in Sandusky out in the Thumb, WMIC 660 AM, 95.3 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. And you know this by now, but the way the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. If you have a question, send me an email. Please don't send it to me via social media message. I probably won't see it. Send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It can be a question you want me to answer directly or something you want me to pass along to the folks maybe that you don't have access to, MUCC, DNR, or whatever. This time around, we happen to be talking with Lieutenant Joe Molnar of the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. And Joe, I don't have any particular questions that people have sent me, but I do have some questions I want to pass along to you. Before the break, you mentioned trespassing. Recreational trespass, I know, is a huge problem for you and your people this time of year. How do we avoid this? What do we have to have in our pockets to show that we are indeed legitimate and not trespassing?
One of the best things you can do is have written permission from the landowner, have something with their contact information on it as well. It's very easy to, if we come in contact with someone saying, oh yeah, Jim gave me permission. Well, anyone's got Onyx or one of the other programs nowadays, it seems that they can see who the landowner's name is, so they could easily say that they have permission from someone. But, if you can get written permission from a landowner and then have their contact information, their phone number, whatever it might be, so that way if we do have questions that we can reach out and verify that they do indeed have permission.
And what is the law regarding recovering an animal? If I shoot a buck and he runs over on the neighbor's property, does he have to let me come after it?
He does not have to let you come after it. That's where having the good relationships don't spoil, a relationship with a neighbor by going onto the property, tracking that deer. Always seek permission first. If you do go upon your neighbor's property, there's a chance you might get written a citation for recreational trespass and lose that deer. So, that's where being good neighbors is important, and, always ask first.
If the neighbor doesn't want to allow you access, that's where your people get involved. How is that usually resolved, Joe?
Well, this is always one of those hard situations. Sometimes if we have a relationship with that neighbor, that, maybe we can help get you access, but ultimately we cannot require that neighbor to let you have access, or even for us to come upon the property to recover that deer, because there's no violation. So we don't have the right to go and retrieve that deer also. But that neighbor has no rights to that deer themselves. So if they take it, if they tag it and they didn't legally harvest it, they themselves have broken the law. But ultimately, if a landowner says, no, you can't come onto my property, or we're not able to identify who the landowner is, unfortunately, that deer is going to be, it's going to be lost. You're not going to be able to continue the track.
Well, and that's the last thing anybody wants, right? We want these animals to go to good use. So again, have a relationship with your neighbors, check in with them ahead of time. Hey, can I come onto your property? What's the phone number? Have that all lined up where if we do have to call your folks, everything, it makes it just a lot smoother, right?
Correct.
What about, let's talk about tagging deer. Now, is there really a specific way to tag an animal, or if we notch it and affix it, attach it to the animal, that's good enough?
The law does specifically state that it has to be attached to either the lower jaw, the antler, or the leg of the deer. But filling out those tags, completely, date of harvest, the antler points on the deer, and then getting it attached in a permanent manner. Now, one thing we don't want to be seeing is the tag wrapped around the antler. That creates a situation where we can't read it. Some of the best things to use are either paracord or a zip tie, something that is going to hold it in place. Now, I know a lot of hunters also get concerned about, as they're dragging the deer, that it may come off. That's where something where, using like some vet wrap or, taking some more paracord or something to help, make sure that it stays affixed there and doesn't get pulled off if it, during the drag.
All right. What didn't I ask you? What do you want us as hunters to be aware of that I haven't brought up yet?
Some of the biggest things, any hunt is a successful hunt that you get to go home and share your stories with your family, whether you get an animal or not. So couple things, make sure, especially during firearm deer season, you're wearing your hunter's orange. Wear enough that other hunters are going to see you. When you get in your blind, don't take it off. You have to wear it at all times. And then, also make sure you're sharing your hunting plan, where you're going to hunt, how long you're going to hunt to with a family member. So that way, if there is, a bad, you have an accident, you fall out of your tree stand, or, you get lost. That way, your friends and family can contact law enforcement and we can get you the help that you may need.
Lieutenant Joe Molnar, I wish you a safe and successful season, as well as all of your people. Appreciate your time, and we will talk again soon.
All right, great. Thanks again for having me on, and have a wonderful season, everyone.
All right, Lieutenant Joel Molnar of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 3, we will switch gears and talk about something other than deer hunting. That's coming up in hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And what is on your mind right now? Well, I bet you a lot of you are thinking about deer season, about the gun season opening up here next week, about the whitetail rut going on right now. And granted, that is a very good thing. That's a very good topic to have in your mind. But there are a lot of other things going on in the outdoors here in the great state of Michigan right now, too. So let's turn our attention to Captain Mark Pieniozek of Real Fishn, realfishnllc.com. Hey, Cap, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. I appreciate you having me.
Hey, listen, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. You are a man who has such a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of information. I mean, you grew up there on the shore, literally on the shore of Saginaw Bay.
Yeah, that's very true, Mike. So there's a lot of the stuff I probably shouldn't pass down because it's not good, but there's a lot of very interesting things that have happened on the bay, and on the water in Linwood for the last 64 years that I've been around. So it's there's a lot of stuff going on out there.
Before we go too far, how was your summer fishery out there, Mark?
The summer fishing was really good. My partner and Adam and I did really well. You have to excuse me, I got a cold here, but we did really well. We had a lot of trips this summer, caught a lot of fish. Obviously, our summer fish are not big fish, but we caught a lot of fish, put a lot of numbers in the boat, and that's all that's all you can get from your customers. They got to be happy with that.
Well, exactly. And that summertime fishery is not a size thing. It's a numbers thing.
There is no doubt. If you want size, you come in December. That's our best time to get big fish here.
Now, will you be running trips in December, Mark?
I will. As soon as duck season's over, which I think is like December 1st or 2nd. Excuse me, 1st or 2nd, we'll be out there going after walleye.
Okay, so let's talk about that fall fishing here in a minute. First of all, duck season, because that's what you're doing right now, right?
100%. We're all in on ducks right now. We've had a lot of good days and a couple tough days, but it's hunting and fishing. That's how it works.
Well, and is it weather related or is it bird number related?
It's a little bit of both. Like today was really tough. 70 degrees out in November. Birds didn't want to fly for us today. I'm not saying they didn't fly for other people, but we moved around a little bit. We couldn't get on them. And honestly, it was the first blank I think we've had in 11 years.
Well, and like you say, somebody's always going to find the fish. Somebody's always going to find the birds. But that's part of hunting and fishing, right? Not every day is going to be a limit.
No, 100%. And I think, I'm good with that. As long as I put a good effort in. I personally didn't hunt this morning, but Adam did. Took some of my customers out because I wasn't feeling good. And he moved around 3 times to 3 different areas where we've been getting birds, and they just didn't want anything to do with anything. And that's hunting and fishing. There's some days you can't keep your rod in the water, can't keep shells in your gun, and other days nothing leaves. That's just how it works.
Well, I'm not a waterfowl hunter. I readily admit that, but one of the things I find fascinating, at least looking at it from the outside, is that it appears that the worse the weather is, the better the duck hunting is.
100%, Mike. And I think that's it's been tough in our area the last couple of years, early part of the season, because it's been warm, 70-degree weather. The birds aren't coming down. They're not getting pushed. Now, a lot of birds migrate anyway, but other birds want to be pushed. Once their food source is gone, covered up with snow, and their water is frozen, then they keep heading south for open water and food. And that's how ducks live. That if there's open water and food, that's where they're going to stay. So if they can still have it up north in Canada, there's no reason to be down here in beautiful Linwood, Michigan. So
I know we have a large number of resident geese because a lot of the stupid things are living in my backyard. Is that the case with ducks too? Do we have a lot of resident local ducks?
Not really. I mean, we have some, don't get me wrong. I mean, they're here in the summer, but not like geese. I've had a couple goose hunts early. I work with a young guy. We had a couple goose hunts, and I think his totals for last month was like 666 geese they took, and that's just a crazy number.
That is a crazy number, and I say keep at them, keep at those things. Is a goose now? Are you doing goose hunts on the big water? Or are you a field hunting? Are you and your partner
in the field for the geese? Yeah, in the field, and it's just crazy. They just keep pouring in. It's unbelievable.
How is that different? Duck hunting and goose hunting, 2 completely different activities.
Yeah, 2 totally separate things. Now, I used to do a lot of field hunting for ducks back here probably 6-7 years ago, and our mallard population just isn't what it used to be. It's dwindling. And so I haven't been out in probably 5-6 years in the fields after ducks, but it used to be absolutely phenomenal. And my son, I think he's the same age as your daughter. He's like 33. And back in the day when he was like 12, 13, you could go out and lay in a field and shoot all the ducks you wanted. And now if you see 5, 6 ducks in the field, that's an amazing thing.
Going back to your waterfowl hunting out there on the bay, that is again, to me, it's a fascinating activity. It's not one that I want to do, right? I've done it enough to know that I don't want to do it a lot because it's a lot of work for one thing.
Oh, it is. I think that's the biggest thing is you have to own so many decoys. I have 2 layout boats, and I have a first mate that runs with me. You throw the layout boats out, you throw 100 decoys out, and it's a lot of work, man. I got to tell you, it's definitely a lot of work, a lot more work than what people think it is. And that's why I actually get a lot of older people on my boat, because they can't hunt anymore on their own. They can't do the work anymore on their own. And so they hire myself or Adam, and we'll go out there and throw my ducks, show them a good time. I cook breakfast every morning. I got a little 17-inch Blackstone, so I cook a little breakfast omelet or whatever you want. And we try to have some fun and make a good day out of it.
I feel like that's part of the appeal of waterfowl hunting, though, is the camaraderie. You don't have to be quiet. You don't have to sit there and hide. I mean, you can smoke cigars. You can joke around and have a lot of fun.
No, 100%, Mike. That's the biggest difference between every other hunting sport. There's camaraderie involved. I have radios, so I talk to my guys in radios, and I tell my guys every day, if I didn't have radios to be able to give you crap over the phone about you missing stuff, I wouldn't hunt.
Well, where are you? You're not there in the boat with them?
No, I'm actually behind them, probably about 300 yards watching birds come in, and I'll radio and let them know this bird's working from the right or left. And yeah, so it's fun to watch.
So are they out there in individual layout boats?
Yes, they are in individual layout boats. I actually put mine pretty close together, probably 20, 30 feet, so they can talk to each other. If they're going to be out there, they might as well have someone to talk to. So I put my 2 together so they can talk, BS a little bit. And then I just stay behind them probably about 200-300 yards and give them crap every time they miss a duck. And I'm good at that.
I was going to say, I can picture that.
Yeah.
So on those layout boats, you say the worse weather, the better. But those things don't look to me like they're designed to be out there in rough water.
I'll be honest with you, Mike. So I'm extremely cautious when it comes to that. I know some guys will take their guys out in 4-footers. I personally won't do it. The layout boats will hold up to that, and they're extremely stable. I'll stand up in 2-3-footers myself. But I've been doing it for 40 years. I don't suggest people do it, but I mean, that's how stable they are. They're extremely stable. They will not sink. They can fill up with water and they still float.
Speaking of being cautious, if I remember right, Cap, you don't even run wintertime ice fishing trips anymore, do you?
No, I don't. The cautiousness got me there, Mike, because the ice has just been so iffy. And I sold my airboat here. It's been probably 3-4 years ago. And I love ice fishing. It is literally my favorite thing to do in the world. But it has just been way too dangerous for me personally. Other people do it, all the time. Nothing against them. I'm happy for them. I'm just not going to do it.
I know from talking with you before when we did an offshore tackle podcast, the story of the first walleye that you caught out there on the bay. Tell that story again, Mark.
It's one of my favorite stories. Me and a couple buddies that lived on Linwood Beach were going to go out perch fishing, and I happened to run into Frank's, get some minnows. And Frank was working, and he goes, Mark, ever tried for those walleye? And I know it's hard for young people to believe it, but I never even heard of a walleye. I didn't even know they were in the Saginaw Bay. And because there was no social media, and everyone kind of kept their lips pretty tight. And Frank goes, Mark, he goes, try this Swedish pimple. It was purple tape, silver. He goes, put this on your pole and just jig it and you'll catch something. I'm like, all right. So we went off Bowtail Road. We're out there. I'm jigging. I keep getting snagged on. Snagged on the bottom. So I'm just like, man, this is driving me crazy. This is not a good spot for me, So this old timer happened to be walking by, and he had 5 big tails sticking out of his box. I run over to him. I go, hey, mister, what are those? He goes, walleye. I'm like, no kidding. I go, what does it feel like when you catch one? He goes, like you're snagged on the bottom, kid. And I was just like, it happened to me like 8-9 times. So he had me go jig. I caught one. He pulled it up out of the hole, and I've been hooked ever since.
And that's how it all started for Captain Mark Pieniozek of Real Fishing, realfishingllc.com. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. Lots more when we come back. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN in Ludington, just up the coast, WMLQ in Manistee. Let's go north. Let's go to Newberry, WNBY, 1450 AM. While we're up there, how about the Sioux, 1400 WKNW, and then also in Saginaw, WSGW AM and FM. Now, usually, I'm in the studios of WSGW each week to record the show. This week, I had a little bit of a health situation and wasn't quite up to being in the studio. I bet you next week I will be back. But in the meantime, having a wonderful conversation with Captain Mark Pieniozek of Real Fishn, realfishnllc.com. Mark, we were talking about waterfowl hunting. Let's change the focus here a little bit. Let's look at this late fall walleye fishing on the bay that is going to kick off, I don't know, here eventually, not too far down the future. But I keep hearing from my buddies, including you, if you're looking for a double-digit fish out of Saginaw Bay, that's the time to be out there.
It is. It's 100%, Mike. All our big fish come back down from Alpena and Oscoda and all the big lake, and they work their way down, and then they stage out here in the bay. And December, as long as it doesn't freeze up, is the best time for big fish, and not just a couple big fish. I mean, there's a lot of big fish out there.
How do you fish them in December? Is it a lot like the summertime? Same tactics, same areas, or is it completely different?
Actually, a lot of the same areas still work, which is very interesting to me. But we troll bigger body baits, bandits, flicker nines, bigger body baits. Because you got to remember, in the fall, that's the biggest that most of the bait fish will be is in the fall and the winter. So we use a lot bigger body baits, and we're trolling slower because the water's colder. So we're like 1.2, 1.5 miles an hour.
That's an interesting point on the bigger baits because, the small young of the year bait fish aren't small anymore. They're bigger.
Yep, they're all adult size, and so we switch up and go to bigger body baits.
And slow, you say?
Yeah, real slow. Slow wobble. Because you got to remember their metabolism's a little slower, right? The water's colder. So just like myself, when I get colder, I don't want to move as fast or as much, and kind of the same deal.
Just a slow back and forth.
Yep, slow wobble.
And then you say the normal areas, so the same place. See, I find this interesting. The same places you would fish midsummer, you go back to in December.
Yeah, even your favorite spot there that we fished last spring. I mean, that place can be phenomenal in December with big fish.
Wow.
So it's very crazy. You can be in 4 or 5 feet of water. You can be in 25 feet of water. They're there, and they're eating before they go up the river.
Are there many people out there that time of year on the water?
So when I first started fishing that time of year, there was myself and 2 other guys, and both of them fished professionally on MWT and some of the other big tournaments. And they're both ones from like the Midland Saginaw area, and another one's from Linwood down the beach for me. And so we started. I happened to be out there. They were both out there. We're all catching fish, and there's 3 of us. Now, if it's a nice day and it's 50 degrees and no wind, there's 300 to 500 of my closest friends out there.
Wow.
Yeah, so it grew from 3 of us to 300 to 500.
And how? Well, I suspect those big fish, you don't have to worry about a tattle flag, right? I mean, that's a bite.
Yeah, there's a fish there, that's for sure.
I think I need to get in on that. I've got my angler quest has been put to bed for a long time now, but I've got invitations from a lot of people. I really think I need to get out there this fall in December and give that a try.
Yeah, if you can pick a nice day, Mike, it is definitely by far the nicest. I had some older guys here 2 years ago, and they all had boats. They all fished all summer, and they happened to give me a call. They might have seen a post of mine on Facebook or something, and they gave me a call, and they didn't really believe the big fish stories, right? So These guys were all in their late 70s, and they come out on the boat, and we just piled up big fish after big fish after big fish. And these guys, they could not wrap their head around. They had no clue that we had big fish in the Saginaw Bay because they only fished it in the summer.
Right.
And they're like, "You've got to be kidding me! This is unbelievable." I go, I know.
It sounds like a different fishery than the summertime.
Oh, it is 100%. Not even the same. Not even closely, remotely the same.
Now, you mentioned social media. You do a lot of stuff. You post a lot of stuff on social media. For an old guy, you're pretty active out there.
I am, Mike. Actually, social media, I actually did not have business cards for 7 or 8 years when I first started my business. Didn't have them. I just posted stuff on social media, and business came my way. But that was, before a lot of people got into the business too and stuff like that. So I was very fortunate when I started, but that's how bad I was with business cards. People go, "Hey, Mark, can I get your number?" And I go, "Take a picture of the side of my truck." Because I always had my number on the side of the truck. So they'd take a picture of my truck and then call me. So
one more thing on walleye before we move on. Do you do any night fishing?
I do. Actually, I tried to do a show last January with Jenny out here, and we caught 2 fish. Probably marked 5,000 fish, but we could not get them to go in the dark. But spring and fall is phenomenal in the dark.
How do you do that? Do you put something on your boards, or how do you keep track of your boards?
Yeah, so if you look at the offshore planer boards and you look at the flags, those 2 slits that are in the flag? You ever pay attention to them? Yeah, there's 2 slits right in the flag. So I get like a 6-inch, I use green, glow stick, break the glow stick, throw it in those slits. That's all I use.
And you can see that.
Oh, yeah. As long as they're green. If you go with any other color like the orange and reds and yellows, my old eyes can't see them. But green, I'm good with. So that's all I use. There's fancy lights out there and all kinds of crazy stuff, but I just go with the tried and true green glow sticks.
Let's turn our attention now to another fishery that I know you're very fond of this time of year, and that's whitefish, especially off the pier heads. Tell me more about that.
Oh, Mike, you're digging in my secret treasure chest there,
listen,
buddy.
That's my job.
So, Tawas and Ascota both they still have whitefish. They used to have piles of whitefish. And so I started going up probably 30 years ago during gun season, starting usually maybe right about now, 10th of November, and going through the end of November. I used to drive up to Tawas, go to the pier behind the Holiday Inn. I don't know what it's called now, but walk out on the pier, and it would be elbow to elbow. And you'd have to wait probably 45 minutes to get a spot. Then somebody would leave. You would take their spot and then start fishing. And basically what we do is we use glow-in-the-dark teardrops with wax worms on a steelhead rod, and then we put a glow tip on the end of the steelhead rod so you can see if a fish hits it, and you want it to be probably about a foot off the bottom. If you're on the bottom, you're going to catch gobies. But you want to set it so you're about a foot off the bottom, and usually anywhere from a quarter to a half-ounce weight, about a foot and a half above that glow lure. So we just let it sit there. But the whole key there, I'll be honest with you, Mike, is you want bad weather. You want southwest winds 15 plus. And those are the best winds there. And it's crazy. I'd take some buddies up and we'd catch 30, 40 fish a night.
Well, again, with the bad weather, what is it with you in bad weather?
I bring it with me.
Now,
honestly, so if it's really calm there, they don't seem to want to bite. I don't know if it's the mixing of the water that gets them excited to bite. That's pretty much how I look at it. But that water washes up and the waves used to come right over the seawall. We'd duck and then watch our rods and then duck again. But the worse it was from the southwest, the better the fishing.
So now, are we talking in the old days it used to be like this, or is it still good fishing now?
It's still good fishing there. You can't get the 30, 40 fish bags, but if you take a couple buddies, you can get anywhere from 6 to 20 fish.
Well, that's a pretty darn good night. I'd take that anytime.
Oh, no, I agree with you. So I go up there with a couple buddies. We'll run up there and, catch a few fish. And whitefish don't really freeze well. They don't hold well in the freezer. About 30 days is all you got in their toast. So I only like to keep what I'm going to eat. I smoke it. I actually make a killer whitefish dip, and that I take to parties and stuff. But yeah, I'm a whitefish fan, so I love it. So it's fun for me.
And the thing about whitefish is the eating, right? It's not they're not a good fighting fish. They don't get real big, or am I wrong here?
There we catch some 2 to 4 pounders, and we're pulling them straight up. They can put up a little bit of a battle because we're only using 4-pound test. So you're not horsing them. The biggest key there too is you need a net with about a 10-foot long handle.
That's what I was going to ask you. I'm thinking of those piers in my mind, thinking, how in the world do you get down there to net a fish?
Yep. Yeah. You need a long handle. I always wear a headlamp so that way I can see the fish down there and then net my fish and then bring it up. So, but it is an absolute riot. I've been doing it for a long, long time. Now, if you go up there, if there's 20, 30 guys, that's a lot of guys, but it's still a lot of fun. And once you get hooked on it, it's pretty tough not to go. And a lot of people have never heard of it and have never done it, but it is an absolute blast.
Now, you mentioned just those 2 break walls, but I got to believe this time of year, any break wall that goes out in the Great Lakes is going to have whitefish on it.
See, I agree with you too. I think like out in the thumb there, Port Austin, I would have to believe they come in there because a lot of times I've caught them trolling out there in 30 feet of water right in front of the break wall. So I got to believe that Port Austin has them. I don't know of anybody that has actually fished it for him, but I got to believe they got to be there.
All right, Captain Mark Pieniozek, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. You're a wealth of information. I hope you can get rid of that cough that you picked up out there in the rain the other day.
Woo, she's tough, bud.
Well, hang in there, and we will talk again soon. Captain Mark Pieniozek of Real Fishing, realfishingllc.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. Lots more coming up. Stick around. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the company that makes this sound. You know what sound that is. That's the sound of my Rapid River knife locking back open. I just pulled it out of my pocket. This is the same knife that I used to take care of my Michigan bear, that I used to take care of a big doe I shot a few weeks ago. And if I'm lucky enough to get out in the woods during firearm season and shoot a buck, it's the same knife I will use to take care of that. Rapid River knives are handmade by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. They are guaranteed for life. And I can't think of a better Christmas present. If you go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.com, you'll see what I mean. If you use the promo code Avery10, you get 10% off at that website, rapidriverknifeworks.com, or in their showroom on US 2 just east of Rapid River. Avery 10 gets you 10% off. Christmas just around the corner. Believe it or not, it's time to start thinking about Christmas presents. And a Rapid River knife is the best present I can think of. All right, I talked about if I get back out into the woods, and I really want to, because now being, this time of November, just before the firearm season starts, the whitetail rut is going on. That's the time when the whitetail rut is the deer breeding season. It's the time when testosterone levels are very high in the bucks. They're only thinking about one thing. They're not thinking about their safety so much. They're not thinking about running at night only. They become more visible during the daylight. I've been watching the cameras, our trail cameras on our lease property, and there are very respectable bucks running around there all day long. So I wish I could get out there. My advice to you is, if you can get out in the woods right now, do it. I don't care what the weather's like. I don't care what time of day it is. If you can get out in the woods for a few hours this time of year, do it. Take advantage of the whitetail rut. Now, if you were with me earlier in the show, you know why I can't get out in the woods right now. I had a stroke last week, and it took me completely by surprise. I did not see it coming. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have high cholesterol. We don't really know what caused it. I was walking back from the mailbox in my house in town, so if it was going to happen, it happened in a good place. I wasn't up in a tree stand. I wasn't behind the wheel. I wasn't up north. I wasn't out in the water. I was home. I was able to get back in the house. My wife, Denise, saw what was going on. She called 911. The paramedics, the ambulance got there real fast. They loaded me up. I knew right away I was in trouble. I knew it. A stroke wasn't even on my radar screen, but I just knew I was having a stroke. They got me to ER. They were able to put the that clot busting drug, what I'm calling a miracle drug. They were able to get that in me in time. And even though I'm not in, and this is just last week, so even though I'm not in the radio studio right now to record this week's show, I'm doing it from my home studio. The fact that I'm able to do it is absolutely, I don't want to say it's a miracle, but God was certainly watching out for me. He was watching over me. I mean, when this thing happened, the right side of my body was drooping. I couldn't move my right arm. When I tried to walk to get in the ambulance, my right leg was dragging. I mean, I was in rough shape. And here I am now dealing with some fairly minor vision issues that are getting better every day. Some balance issues that are getting better every day. I'm not quite up to walking out in the woods yet. I don't think my doctors would like that. I know my wife Denise would not like that. And realistically, I know that I just can't do that yet. My goal is to be able to get out in the woods for the opening day of gun season, to get out there with my son James and my grandkids. And I think that's going to happen. James says, look, I'll throw you on the back of a quad. We'll get you out there. And I know he will. Some things to take away from this, right? You've got 4 hours. If you think you're having a stroke, don't screw around. Go get it checked out. Because if it is indeed a stroke, you want that miracle drug in you. That I think is a big part of why I'm better. I'm also getting better, again, because of God's grace. And you know what else played a big role? The fact that I heard from so many of you. I did post out there, and you might say, well, why did you post you had this? I posted it because I was letting people know why I was repeating last week's radio show, and I wasn't going to do a Wednesday night live, and I wasn't going to do any live stream, so I wanted people to know what was going on. And the outpouring of support was overwhelming. People that I hadn't heard from in years, people that I don't know personally. You were all there rooting for me. And you reached out and you said you were praying for me and you were thinking about me and you were wishing me the best. And I felt it. Okay? So I just want to let you know that your support and your prayers were very, very much appreciated. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us. If you've been with me before, and by the way, if you have, thank you very much. If you're a new listener to the show, thank you for that. I appreciate that very much as well. But if you have been with me before, you know I like to wrap up each week's show with a good friend of mine, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a guy I've worked with and been friends with for many, many years since we were both younger and our hair was thicker and a little bit darker, eh, Dave?
Oh yeah, I looked at some old pictures, because we're moving, and had found a box, and I had a black beard doing your show. Must have been one of the first ones about 30 years ago.
Well, it's been a good run, Dave, and people have certainly gotten to know you, haven't they? Or at least they think they have. They feel like it.
Oh yeah, right. It was quite an honor to do your show after all the other chefs in the world. You picked me. Thank you.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And one of the reasons was, many reasons. Number one, you're just a darn good chef. Number two, you're very good on camera. You're very good at explaining what you're doing. And number three, you just have a great personality. People love to watch you, Dave.
Well, thank you. Thank you. A lot of people have commented on your Outdoor Magazine page there where I do some cooking.
Yep. People love that. And how about some cooking for this week? What do you have for us?
How about a venison roll-up, seeing how it is the season? So,
it certainly is.
It's a Germanic dish, originally from Germany, okay? So you get about 2 pounds of venison, either backstrap or round steak, 4 slices of bacon, 4 dill pickle spears, and this is for 4 portions, okay? 1 onion cut into wedges, same size as the pickle spears and stuff. Apple, the same thing. You're going to peel an apple and cut it into thin wedges. Just about everything should be just about the same size. You might have to do a little trimming depending on the onion and the apple. You need flour to dredge, salt if you use salt, and lots of grated black pepper and some either vegetable oil or olive oil. So you're going to divide the venison into 4 8-ounce serving pieces, and you're going to pound it thin between plastic wrap to tenderize it. You want to spread it out enough so when you eyeball the bacon, the pickle, onion, and apple, it's going to go in there. You might have to revamp how you were going to do this, but you want to make sure that it's big enough to roll up with all of that stuff inside. So in the centerpiece of each meat, you want to place a spear of pickle, apple, lemon wedge, and bacon strips. And you're going to fold and wrap the meat around. So you want to start kind of 2/3 from the bottom as it's looking at you. Roll up 1 flap of the meat and then tuck the 2 outside edges in, and then either with toothpicks or string, after you roll it up, you're going to dredge it in flour, brown it on all sides containing a small amount of oil, and remove and place to an oven-proof pan. Now you're going to bake this in a sauce, and it's going to take quite a while because you want to make sure this venison is tender. So you're going to take shredded apple or applesauce you could use, but it's a little sweet unless you can buy some unsweetened apple sauce. 1 onion, chopped up real nice and fine, horseradish to taste. If you like, you could get a couple ounces of apple schnapps, and brandy is an option. You can use that or not. And then a couple of cups of beef gravy. So you want to saute the onion, grated up, apple, and horseradish slowly, kind of brown it up a little bit, and add the gravy to the mixture. Flambe with the schnapps and the brandy if you're using that, and cook it down slowly for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 minutes just to get everything started. Pour this over the roll-ups, roulades, and cover, and you're going to bake at 350 degrees for an hour and a half or until it's tender. And if you're going to use toothpicks to hold it together, make sure you remove the toothpicks or the string before you serve this. Put that on a separate plate and unwrap it, and then put it on your plate where you're going to have your gravy. I would put gravy over the whole thing, and then serve with buttered noodles. It's the traditional way. And that's it. Easy peasy.
Well, I remember this. You did this for the TV show. And
yeah, we did.
As I hear you explaining it, it's kind of hard to figure it out while listening on the radio show, but I'm pretty sure I have the video version of this. Let me go back through the archives and see if I can find it. And if I can, I will post this on the Facebook page so people can get a better idea of it.
Oh, wow. That would be great. Mike, this is so cool the way that you're doing this nowadays with the recipe. I do appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody that watches your podcast and listens to the radio is appreciative of it too.
Yeah. And what you're talking about, Dave, is I post the recipe every week. In fact, I just got an email or a Facebook message from somebody saying they listened to the show last week. They really want to find the cookbook, but they can't find the cookbook. That's because it's not in print anymore, right?
Right. You have to go to the secondhand, wherever these sites are, where you can eBay, where you can buy a lot of books are on, the secondhand market. And the Wild Game Cookbook, Dixie Dave's Wild Game Cookbook, is no exception. People find it all the time. They tell me.
All right, David. Well, we will look for that. I will look for this venison recipe. If I can find it, I'll post it. And I appreciate you joining me this week, and we'll talk again next time.
Hope you're doing good.
I am doing great. Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show. As are you. Again, once again, a big thank you to those of you who reached out to me after I had the stroke. It was pretty, I got to be honest, it was pretty scary there for a while. But God was watching over me. Looks like I've come through this thing very well. I think I'm going to be in great shape, and thank God and thank you for your concern. My name is Mike Avery. The show is called Outdoor Magazine. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com.